This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. It is hard to believe, but we have reached the very last episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm sad.
Yeah, 5 years. Well, more than 5 years. 5 seasons.
10 years. No, not really, but...
well, 7 years, know, but 8 years, I think the first announcement was over 8 years ago.
Yeah,
possibly.
I would think so. Mm-hmm.
I think maybe 9 years ago. Yeah, it's been a long road.
Let's not do that again. We are going to review the final episode, but first, let's cover some news. There's just a little bit. A little smattering. One is about Strange New Worlds, one item we have, which is that Anson Mount posted on Instagram as he was leaving the set, saying goodbye to Strange New Worlds for season 3, wrapping, and wanted to thank Canada for its hospitality. So you're welcome. And
on behalf of Canada, you speak for all Canadians, I understand.
Of course I do. I'm representing Canada, Canadians who don't live in Canada. But he mentioned in his post that Strange New Worlds will go back into production in the spring,
which March is 10 months away, and that would be the soonest.
Yeah, and I was in Toronto. That's not really spring.
Right, exactly.
So, although I guess it's technically spring, but still.
10 months is certainly shorter than the hiatus between seasons 2 and 3, but that's because of the strikes. However, even before the strikes, it was going to be 10 months between the stop of production on season 2 and the beginning of season 3. And then they just added another 7 because strikes.
Sure.
Us oldsters grew up, every September, new seasons.
Right. They take a 2-month break in the summer, maybe 3, and then boom, back in.
It's start in September, end in May, and then back in September. And that still exists for, some procedural shows and stuff like that. But certainly for prestige dramas and stuff like this, that's not the case. It's longer hiatuses, shorter seasons.
Yeah.
We don't know when season 3 is going to arrive, but I'm guessing like March 2025, right around when they, maybe when they start shooting the 4th season. And the 4th season probably wouldn't arrive till late summer or the fall of 2026. So we really don't know what else we could expect in 2020. Because if Academy's 2026 and season 4 of Strange New Worlds is in 2026, what else is in 2025? Maybe this Section 31 movie, maybe? We still don't know when that's coming.
Right. Could still be this year, but it might be early next.
Both of the animated shows are gone by 2025.
Maybe. Don't be so pessimistic. Prodigy. Season 2 could be a massive hit on Netflix, and boom, they order season 3.
Which will take them at least 3 years to make, right?
But it won't be over. You said it was
okay,
good.
Yeah, okay. You're yes, you're
Captain
on.
Literal.
Yeah. So 2025 could be a very lean year for Star Trek TV.
Well, I'm just not going to think that far ahead. I got too much going on. Let's talk about something that is coming, which is Starfleet Academy. There was an interview with Alex Kurtzman in the LA Times.
It was mostly about Discovery wrapping up and, some good stuff in there about that. But they did talk about Academy. We knew it was going to be set in the 32nd century, but he got into his reasoning behind that. And it's not just to tie it to Discovery. His position is, and looking at like his son, who's 17, and his son's generation, which I guess he's kind of targeting the show after, it's
which
a
is
YA.
my kid's generation. I have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old.
He didn't feel that the kind of utopian traditional Star Trek era, 23rd, 24th, 25th type of thing would work with that generation. Interesting perspective. He felt that the post-burn era would have a better fit as Starfleet reestablished itself and tries to solve these kind of big challenges of...
Well, it's post-burn era, and it's trying to create something. Starfleet Academy hasn't existed, and there hasn't been a lot of exploration because it's been people just trying to get by. I mean, it's an interesting theory. I don't know if I agree with him or not. I mean, not that it matters if I do, but because if you think about the original series, it was a very tumultuous time. And so that utopian vision was something that was very appealing and very needed. And that's what people particularly loved about it.
Well, he's not saying the show's going to be dark. In fact, in the rest of the interview, he talks about that, about how Discovery was a little too dark at the beginning and they kind of got the right mix with Strange New Worlds. It's more this notion that today's kids are looking at how they're going to have to solve a lot of problems that were generated by previous generations, climate change being an obvious one, but probably others. And there's a better fit in his mind. I get that. I wanted to see the Starfleet Academy idea and the Legacy show idea merge and become one idea. And you have an Academy show set in the 25th century and
so that all those people could come by.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I could see the logic and I see your point of view. So
I understand what he's saying. It's not hard for me to understand what he's saying. And I don't know, even as someone who is a parent of my youngest is almost 17. I don't know. I mean, she's not a Star Trek fan, so it's hard to ask in that context. But I don't know if she'd prefer what her generation would rather see in a Star Trek show. It's an interesting question. The only kids I know her age who love Star Trek just love Star Trek. So
he used the word authentic multiple times as well, which is that thing that got it. He said that it would be more authentic for, right. kids today.
I mean, he also said it would be optimistic, fun, funny, and emotional, which is good. The thing he said that I loved hearing about was that they wrote the role for Holly Hunter, never thinking she'd do it because she's going to be the lead. And then they sent her the scripts and she loved them and signed on right away. And I just can't even imagine thinking, let's send them to Holly Hunter.
Well, I think I joked a couple weeks ago that they probably wrote it as a Holly Hunter type, which right. And you could, like, in your mind, when you think a Holly Hunter type character, you could immediately envision what that character would be like as an academy, the head of an academy. So, yeah, I think it's fun that they're like, okay, well, at least we should try, right?
Right.
There's 5 other great actresses that could do that kind of thing, but it's great that they got the OG.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. He also mentioned that the primary set for Starfleet Academy is the biggest they've ever built.
Yeah, that's going to be on the mega stage in Toronto.
Right.
That's literally what they call it, the mega stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the biggest stage in North America. It's going to be huge. And that's, another big thing about the show is it's set in San Francisco. And he said, but it's going to be also space-based. He said they're in the middle of answering the question of what does, San Francisco look like in the 32nd century. I am really hoping that this show will do something that maybe no other Star Trek show has done, possibly with the exception of DS9 a bit, and maybe a little bit of Picard, which is give us an idea of what life is like for the average Joe in the world that they live in. We got some of that in DS9, you'd visit Cisco's restaurant and stuff. But
and his dad was responding to things that were going on in the world, around him as just a guy who had a restaurant. But I'd be very interested in that as well.
So I'm hoping there's non-Starfleet characters, non-Academy characters. The guy, the cliche is the guy who owns the coffee shop.
Your booth beer, whatever.
Sure. But
the groundskeeper, the coffee shop guy.
He threw in some stuff about surprises are coming, about other things in development, yada. He keeps on, I'm now no longer surprised that he talks about surprises, and I will not be surprised when they try to surprise us. I just want the surprise.
Right. I don't need surprise. I just would like information. But
yeah, you're not allowed to use the word surprise anymore. Just
right. But right. Like, I don't want to hear about the big swings that are going to happen on Strange New Worlds, and I don't need to hear about the surprises.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to Discovery.
There's non-news this week, which is the Nielsen ratings just came out, and Discovery didn't make the list this week.
Oh, so they were moving up every week, and then they didn't make the top 10.
It's more a fact of what are they competing against. And there was kind of stronger competition this week because this is actually technically 5 weeks ago. The show may be doing the same, but there's just other shows doing even better that week. So we don't know yet. We'll see if it comes back to the list. Picard used to pop in and out. Strange New Worlds generally performed better, though, than Discovery, and I think was on the list almost every week, all but 1 week during its second season.
You had another interview with Doug Jones.
Yeah, I talked to Doug again.
I know you guys are friends now. I love it.
I think this is like my 4th interview with him during this season.
Nice.
But we were able to talk about the finale openly.
Yeah, and I'm glad there's something you asked him about, because we know, he was missing from a bunch of episodes in the middle. And so you very directly asked him about the planning around that.
Obviously, you had limited time this season. How much advance warning did you give the producers, or was there a different Saru storyline that they had to kind of move around because of your limited time, or was that all, or did they know enough in time ahead of time?
I had a lovely sit-down conversation with Michelle Paradise, one of our showrunners, at the end of season 4. We were on our last week of filming season 4, and so we had a conversation about where Saru goes from here. I had been first officer for season 4, which was kind of a with captain status. Do you keep a captain and first officer forever and ever after I'd already been captain in season 3? I came back as first officer as more of as a favor to Burnham, who was like a sister to me, and she was happy to have me for that, the big mission of season 4. Where does he go? Does he get so maybe captaining my own ship, or this perfect answer of an ambassador, I think was a very dignified diplomatic place for him to live with all of his gentlemanly wisdom and his negotiation skills. I think that was a good fit for him. So we came to that in conversation that would be good. But also, me being past 60 years old, I'm now 64, wearing rubber bits all the time. It was nice to have a little bit of a break in the middle of the season, to be honest with you. And also it gave me a chance to come home back to the U.S. and visit doctors and, the things that older people need to do here and there. I go to the dentist. Whereas when we were filming for many months at a time, all that had to wait before.
Right.
And the older I get, the more I wanted to be more available to my U.S. amenities. And during that time, it really worked out well too, because I was also able to, promote and do all the press and premiere for Hocus Pocus 2, which worked out time-wise really well.
Look, I get it. I think it has to be hard to go. Look, I love Toronto. It's my hometown. But to have to just go somewhere and be there, and it is another country that you're spending all that time in, I get it. So so being home more was kind of more convenient for him. And he's only 64. He's not that old. But I guess he's thinking of those things.
But they didn't kick him off the ship because he was only available for 5 episodes. That was a decision that predated the limited availability. And he did tell me in the same interview that if there were a season 6, he would have returned for 10 episodes.
Right.
This wasn't going to be the new normal for him. He was ready to come back.
So, of course, if Doug isn't there, which he wasn't, and then they happened to introduce a new character who became the first officer, you talked to him about how much those choices were perhaps intertwined.
You mentioned that they had time to develop this season. So doing the math, does that mean that Callum and Raynor was introduced because of you? And did you ever talk to him about stepping in your shoes?
Oh yeah, he and I chatted quite a bit. And I'm going to guess that maybe I was never told this directly from the writers' room, so I don't know. But it seems like logical that if Saru's leaving the ship, someone has to take that position. Could it have been an advancement for someone who's already on the crew? Maybe, sure. But I think that it was perfect that Callum playing Raynor would come in as a character who was a captain in his own right already, that had kind of a falling down like Burnham has. She understands what it's like to be demoted and fight your way back. So the two of them I love the relationship that they've had throughout the season, and it was really a great addition. Would that have been there if I was still, in all those episodes? I don't know, but I'm glad it worked out as it did. I think it came out perfect.
He didn't confirm it, but it just seems obvious that Callum was brought in because he was, they needed a new first officer, and they weren't going to no offense to the bridge, especially because they were limited too. They weren't going to bump up one of those people.
And they brought in a character who would shake things up, who was on Discovery but not used to the way that Discovery crew does things.
It worked out really well, as he said. I guess we'll never know what it'd have been like if Doug were around for 10 episodes.
But I'm so glad they brought Rayner in. He just added a great spark to the season.
Yeah, and they wrapped things up well with him, which I guess we should get into and start reviewing life itself.
I know, but then we'll be done talking about Discovery. Sad. I just feel I do feel a strong connection to this show just because it did start the whole era. It's personal. There's all kinds of... Anyway, here we go. Final episode. Life itself.
Let me suggest, for our purposes of our discussion, that we follow along like they did let's talk first at least about the episode and then talk about the bit they shot later, which is older Mike and all that stuff.
Sure.
I feel like those are two things that were glued together out of happenstance, but there was an actual season finale here that was its own solid thing, I feel. And I feel like it was a very good season finale. It's the best season finale for Discovery so far.
Yeah, I would agree.
And for the best season of Discovery.
I would agree with that as well.
It's hard because you're thinking that this is the end for everything, but if you just imagine that it wasn't, and you think about how they wrapped things up at the end, it was hopeful, it was nice, everyone got their moment, and you didn't feel like there were these huge loose ends, or, there's a couple things that I feel like could have been dealt with better, and there were some...
Or would have been maybe picked up on had there been another season.
Yeah, because they couldn't tie everything up in a bow because some things weren't meant to be. But there's some things that are season arcs that you feel like should have been tied up. And I felt like they, on character-wise, and I think the plot also, and the bad guys... all of that wrapped up. The Breen weren't the best bad guys, but I feel like it all held together, especially because you had this was the most complicated episode because you essentially had 4 storylines going simultaneously, and they had to really intertwine because what was happening in one place was impacting things happening.
Right. It wasn't an A story, a B story, a C story, and a D story. It was just the story broken up into 4 different locations, basically, to have all of this going on. So, and I felt like what they did really well was they really made those connections, to use one of their favorite words, between what has been happening all season and what happened in the final episode. Like, it felt so thoughtfully put together in terms of looking back and saying, like we said, a few things were missed, but I thought they did. I had a few issues, but overall, I think I found it pretty satisfying.
Let's start with character stuff. The strongest thing, obviously, was Michael's journey. The one thing I didn't like about her storyline is there was, which I know you're going to agree with, too much punchy, kicky.
Oh my God. I was bored. I was like, enough with the punchy kick. I know you think it looks really cool and it's fun, but it's boring. I am bored by that.
They certainly were having fun with the gravity effects and kind of the Christopher Nolan.
I liked her big leap when she said, I want to know when the next big gust is coming. Yeah. And then she rode and I was like, you know what? That's just great. I don't care that it's silly. It's fun. It looked great.
It was a superhero moment. It was great.
It was fun. But I didn't need all the rest of it was annoying.
Especially because they do a fight and then they do another fight, Yep. And it's like...
And Michael picked one of the fights. She started it.
Yeah.
And then she goes, enough. Why are we doing this? And it's like, and Mol's like, you started it. Which she more or less said that. I was like, she's right. Like, I went back and I'm like, what happened? So, yeah.
Well, it was, there was the weird thing of, and this is one of the issues with the technology, Maul had the gun, but Michael has,
whatever she wants.
Magic bracelet. She created a dermal regenerator. She could have created, a poleaxe or a revolver or a phaser.
Boomerang, whatever.
Yeah. It could do anything, right? So why she felt like she was being held by Maul when she could have easily had a gun too. So I don't know. But I still feel that her journey through that was earned in how she was smart enough to put the pieces together to figure out how this weird place worked. Because I liked how there were different rules in there, all the different windows, and she figured out how you have to kind of squeeze through into another dimension, that kind of stuff.
And she was being a scientist and thinking, I don't know if Discovery can hear me or not, but she was recording her observations in a very scientific way, which I liked very much. I thought it made sense. It helps us, the viewers, to follow along, but it also made sense for the character to do, for a Starfleet officer to do. It was the right way to handle it.
The big moment was when she and Maul eventually ended up at the interface. It didn't work for me. Where
the easy triangle puzzle?
Well, yeah, the fact that it just was, that it was just basically a kind of standard IQ test question, right? How many triangles do you see?
Yeah.
I'm like, really? After all the kind of talk about cultural context and understanding the clues, if you just plucked Spock out, dropped him in that room, told him the clue,
he wouldn't have needed to have seen the negative space or any of those things. He would have just figured it out. Yeah.
He didn't need any of the 5 clues.
Same for if they dropped you or me there.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. As soon as I saw the triangles, I'm like, duh, negative space.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
And by the way, there was a weird thing where they had too many triangles at the start. There were 10 triangles, and then there were only 9.
So I checked because I saw you put that in your review, and there's one moment where there are 10. There's like one shot, and then the rest of it there are 9. There are 9, then there's 10, then there are 9.
Yeah. So,
oops.
What happened to the extra one? Well, whatever.
You make extras in case something breaks, and sometimes you forget to put one away.
But the point is that it didn't with the themes of the story. It was just a standard test. Right. And, and she was smart, and Maul was headstrong, and it was kind of sad that but no, not a surprise that even with all of this power, you couldn't restore Locke. Like, it could create a Locke thing, which I thought they were going to do. Like, I thought they were going to make a Locke, and we were going to see him, but he would just stand there and go, hello, who are you? Because he wouldn't know anyone.
Like Search for Spock.
Right.
I know you.
Right. Like, I thought Maul was going to make a Locke and then have him not know who she was, and have that be kind of sad but nice for her. Like, well, now she could make a new friend, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen. I mean, the thing is, like, for the first time she ever, episodes ago, started saying, like, this is going to save Locke, as soon as he died, and she figured out this thing has the powers. Like, why did she think that? Like, wasn't sure why she was so convinced. 1, she was completely convinced that she could bring him back to life. And then 2, she convinced all those Breen that she could do it. And it was really kind of based on hope.
Well, remember, she had the diary, and there was stuff in the diary that wasn't scanned by Fred. And I believe at one point she said there was something she read in the diary about the ability to recreate life.
I know, but it wasn't not a lot to go on.
No, but it was enough for her.
It was
Maul
enough for her.
She was pure instinct, pure.
Yes.
She never showed to be super smart. She was just cunning, and that was enough for her. That was, that's all she needed. We've seen people act on less information.
Yes. What I found surprising was that she had convinced all the Breen that she could do it
they
also.
So their motivation is still weird.
They did build up from the beginning that Maul and Locke had a relationship where they were each other's whole world. So it made sense that she's going to cling to anything because he was all she had. But it seemed like a weird thing to get everybody to go along with you on.
How do you feel about how we never saw what was going on the Dreadnought? They talked about the Dreadnought a lot, but we never, did Arisar survive being shot in the last episode? She left that ship, and, they basically stopped being part of the equation, except that they were sending out fighters and stuff like that.
And then they had to go to the barrier.
Yes, they were sent to the cornfield.
Yes.
by Rayner, which was a nice moment for him because it did still show some mercy for the Breen, a tiny bit.
Everything for him, he came full circle. He had his whole redemption in one season. But he came so far, even going back so far as to remember his first encounter and conflict with Michael and the time he made the wrong decision and realizing how he could make the right decision this time. When he goes, it's just like the avalanche. And you're like, yep.
I mean, he's learned.
He's learned, and the whole crew, because they let him build up that trust, when he starts giving crazy instructions, they all go, yes, sir.
Which is unusual for this bunch of people who are usually backtalkers all the time.
But they've learned to trust him. And I liked his different way of dealing with things. Like when Tilly goes, this is going to sound crazy. He's like, I don't need the preamble. Just tell me the idea.
Because he trusts her. It's one of those things. You'll take a crazy idea from Tilly any day because it'll probably be right.
Right.
Well, her first crazy idea, blow things up with the plasma cloud, that was kind of cliched, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the there's things after us. Let's ignite a cloud of gas behind us. I mean, we've seen that before.
Sure.
But the splitting the ship in two parts and using the spore drive to send them into the cornfield or to the galactic barrier, that was pretty cool.
That was crazy fun.
Discovery was built on the weird from the beginning.
Yes.
It is a ship driven by mushrooms. They should have just embraced the weird and done weird, crazy things all the time.
Well, they did quite a few crazy things.
Fair enough. That's why I'm saying the igniting the plasma cloud. I'm like, nicely done, but
Well, that's why they upped the ante.
Right. I'm not excited.
We took it a step further. Yeah, they were like, here's the thing you're expecting. Now here's the thing you're not.
So they had their stakes going. They had their ticking clocks, and everyone got something to do. Stamets was in there. Tilly was in there. The rest of the bridge crew, who most people can't, remember their names because most of them are new, were in there doing stuff. Adira was part of the plan. They all got heroic moments, in that storyline, in the what was happening outside storyline, as opposed to inside the thing storyline, where those things got a little more cerebral.
Yes.
Especially after we met a progenitor, which we knew was happening. We knew. I don't know why people thought it was going to be Salome Jens. She's 90 years old. She hasn't worked, I mean.
No, and it doesn't need to be her.
The actress they brought in was great.
Yeah.
I mean, the mind blowing. I loved this twist. And it's classic sci-fi of, we didn't make this thing.
Yeah.
We found it. And others found it before us. We were the latest, and now you are the shepherd. What was her name?
Yeah, the steward. She said
the steward.
Right. And Michael's like, but wait, I'm not sure I want to do that. Yeah, I got some stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about hooking up with my old boyfriend. I got, things to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to be God. Who wants to be God? Really? Yeah. It's a lot of responsibility.
No, and I shouldn't be. One person shouldn't be.
Right.
And it takes a certain kind of person to be told, like, you can control everything. And they're like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
I liked how they tied this into the core message of the series, which is the core message of the show about diversity, and infinite combinations. And they're like, progenitors did a pretty good job. There's a lot of diversity. Got some crazy looking aliens out there. Apparently there was nothing. It was just them back billions of years ago, and they were bored. They're like, they wanted to make some friends.
So they did.
Michael's right. Like, how do you top that?
Yeah, you did it.
The impression is this thing could just make life. Like, you couldn't have it make you a sandwich or a top hat.
I've always wanted to eat a sandwich wearing a top hat.
Yeah, exactly. So what else are you going to do with it? I mean, now our predictions article, and you and I did have this notion, which I kind of, they did a low rent version of this, which was she could have recreated Qui-Gon, but it wouldn't have restored, I guess, because of the way this thing worked. It would have just been full of empty Qui-Jonians, right? So what's the point?
I think that's something they would have done next season.
Maybe. So, yeah, and this gets into what is finale and what isn't. So Book mentioned at the wedding that he he planted the thing on Sanctuary 4, which is where he
his
left.
friend, the worm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which we visited once before. So yeah, that could have become a thing in season 6. But otherwise, there really wasn't anything. Now, I do feel like it, and I guess because, this thing was already running long, she's like, don't worry, the president will be fine with this. And
yeah. When there's no, that whole discussion, first of all, there should have been Stamets should have had a much bigger moment there, because this was going to be his whole new purpose. And so he got to argue for like 15 seconds.
Right.
And then that was the end of it. And yes, she's the captain. So when she goes, shut up, listen, I get it. But she's like, I know they're going to agree with me. And I just thought, well,
and they took a bolder stance with Stamets at the end of season 3. If you remember, things ended with Stamets hating her.
Yeah, he was really mad at her.
Now, it would have been bad for the series finale, but Stamets was the worst.
He was the most underutilized character of the season.
Absolutely. They started his whole, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life thing in season 4. And it only got worse in season 5, where he was relegated to be just this utility character, this technobabble character. And some weeks he's the engineer, and it's just, he's such a great actor.
I know, he's so good. He's so talented. And he's great at conveying someone who's dealing with a lot of emotion, but not ready to show it. Like you can always tell there's a lot going on back there. And I would have liked to have seen more of him. I mean, I'm glad Culber got a lot of good stuff to do, but I wanted Stamets to have more.
I did like how Culber certainly had his whole thing going on. And I love that he and Book have this kind of bro thing going on.
Yeah, I loved. Well, as soon as Book came back to the ship episodes ago, and Culber said, we talked about this. How are you doing? Oh, well, I did this. No, that's what you're doing. How are you doing? And he got a hug. He was surprised by the hug that Culber gave him. So those two have been bonding for a while. And then this was great. Like, I got to go with him. I know he needs me. And then even when he says to Book, he's like, that would have driven me crazy before, not knowing the answer. And Book's like, yeah, would have. Like, it was so good. I love those two buddies.
Yeah, they had a little fist bump. Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that Culber would meet God, would meet a progenitor, because that, he was on this spiritual journey, but he did feel some closure. And I think it was earned of how he had a role to play. I guess the ghost of Janal, the soul of Janal, reached out to him through the years and gave him.
Yeah, or left something there. I love that he could appreciate the beauty of the unknown and of the mystery and not feel like it's a conflict with science.
Yeah.
Like that's it's an important thing to be able to do. And they embodied it with his storyline, with his character. And I just loved that part of it, where he was like, I have no idea how that could have happened, but isn't it great?
I think his abuela would have approved.
How about his weird recreated holographic abuela?
I don't know. I mean, it was funny how they were giving everyone a ticking clock in this one. Like, you got 5 minutes, you got 3 minutes to do this, you got 30 seconds. Saru was given 30 seconds. Yeah. They were obsessed with ticking clocks in this episode.
Yes, they constantly had to do that. Like it wasn't dire enough.
Right. So I'm like, okay, were they all timed to end at the same moment, or they should have kept like each character's ticking clock up in the corner. How many seconds does Saru have left,
right.
and Raynor?
Well, look into Saru's eyes, and he's got more than 30 seconds.
That wasn't it. I mean, it was a bit low budget. Like, let's just put him in a room with Nan and do some FaceTime. Yeah.
I love that when they show up, it's a giant green head. But what they did do that was really good, yes, they went the cheap way with him, but all the time he's been away, he's been having adventures, and we really got the sense of wow, he's been living this life. He's been doing all this stuff. He's been talking to all these people, and he knows what's going on. And it's because he was away that he was able to use that knowledge.
We had joked about how he was an off-screen character, but they had been dropping hints. Tarina mentioned how he's on Breen, the border with the Breen. So all of it fit with what they were setting up. And, you know, the whole predator and prey stuff.
Remember him in season 1. Like, we're prey. We can sense the coming of death and we are prey. And now he's like, I am a predator. Look in my eyes. I just thought it was great.
I mean, I did like how Tahal backed off a bit, but still sent a scout ship.
Sure.
She wanted it. I mean, because it was a little weird that the Federation really didn't want her to go to this system. Like, she knew there was something going on. She wasn't going to give that up. So so that little ship got sent to the cornfield as well.
Yeah.
Poor little Breen. 20 years. What did Rayner say? How long is it going to take him to get back?
Couple of decades.
Well.
Oh, they'll find like a transwarp tunnel or something.
Yeah. The Borg will help them or something.
Somebody.
They'll get assimilated and everything will be fine.
It'll be great.
Or they're going to come back in 20 years and they're going to be pissed.
Oh, yeah.
The Breen. They're still a threat. I mean, that I assume that they would have been brought back in season 6 because something, you know, they're obviously a huge threat to the Federation.
Right. Well,
none of that was resolved.
They can show up on the Starfleet Academy show.
I mean, speaking of them, like, so Maul, you know, she had become mustache short. Like, I didn't understand, why was she fighting other Breen inside the port? They work for her. Those are her minions. Yeah. She set them in there.
I don't know why she was fighting them. I understood why she thought that being with Michael would be helpful to her at some point. But I don't know why she was doing that.
I mean, I guess she was single-minded to the end, and she thought a little bit with that scene with Book. It's curious what the plan was there, because Kovich was going to make her secret agent, so she wasn't going to jail.
Offer her the option. She certainly was resourceful.
Fair enough. I mean, a choice between a jail cell and getting to work for Mr. Enigma himself.
I feel like there have been whole TV series based on that premise.
Exactly. And movies, too.
Yeah. Should we talk about Kovich, Mr. Enigma, now that we know who he is? I thought that was a fun reveal.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense. I'm not sure if Daniels was on our short list. I was kind of hoping he was a android. I was thinking about, I don't know how familiar you are with the Asimov series, but there's a android character that basically existed for thousands of years in multiple guises and kind of looked after humanity. And I was thinking maybe it's something like that. Like he's a Soong android. I mean, they couldn't have made it Data or Lore, but...
Oh, no, I'm glad they didn't do that.
But it could have been, you know, another android created by one of the Soongs, you know, or something like that. Fred's cousin, basically.
I'm still sad about Fred. I still feel a little ripped off.
But I think Daniels was very cool.
That was a great idea. I thought it was a great idea because if you knew who he was, it's fun. And if you don't know, that's fine.
The most interesting thing is what he said before that and after that. He said, you know, I've lived many lives. And then they showed little accoutrement around his room, which I don't know if we didn't notice it before, you know, a bottle of Chateau Picard, baseball for Cisco, Geordie's visor. I'm sure there's some other stuff in there.
I feel like I'm counting on our friend Yark to zoom in and figure out what all those things were if you don't have time.
One of those daggers from Mirror Mirror was there, I think. But he said, I am Agent Daniels. Then he said USS Enterprise.
Yeah.
Not NX-01 Enterprise.
Right.
USS Enterprise. So, which USS Enterprise? And
right.
I'm thinking that if you now reimagine, Daniels was on Picard's Enterprise. Pick a random crewmate. That was Daniels, except he was that guy.
He could have been on Kirk's.
I'm saying he could have been on all of them.
Right. He's Mr. Leslie.
Yeah, just pick a... They're not saying he was Geordie, but he knew Geordie, and he knew Kirk, and he knew all of them. He knew Cisco. He's always been there in the background, keeping an eye on the timeline.
Yep.
Maybe he was one of those 2 timeline cops that visited Cisco.
Or he was one of the ones that was making Seven do all those jumps in relativity.
Not the one who was sent to prison.
Not the bad one.
Right. But the good one who showed up on Picard later.
Yeah, that guy.
But a different character. Same actor, though.
Yeah.
Confusing
everybody.
Yeah. But maybe the same guy as well, so, as who was an FBI agent. But no, the implications are profound. And yet we only have to kind of think about that. Because some people are saying, oh, maybe he's future guy. And I'm like, imagine how much dialogue it would have taken for him to explain, okay, because future guy is just a term that we use. It's like, well, so, and there were some other things.
It was smart and simple. You know what else was smart and simple? The wedding. It was smart to be like, the wedding's over. Here's the kiss. Now we have the reception. Like, we got to, would have liked maybe a little drunkenness or, like maybe a hair more of something funny happening at the wedding or some more dialogue, whatever. But it was just the right amount. Like, they're married. Here we go. They looked great.
A lot of gold. Very gaudy.
Yeah.
Outfits. Both of them. Super gaudy.
Both.
Big shoulder pads.
Yeah. Lots of pointy things. And yeah, it's good.
No, it was good costumes. When I talked to Doug about that, he said that Tunde and Frakes argued over who got to shoot their first kiss. And I hadn't realized we've never seen them kiss.
Oh, I totally knew that. I've been very aware of that.
They've touched the foreheads and
she touches his chin. They have all these gestures and they've never kissed. And I've noticed 100% that they never kissed because I kept thinking, how would Saru kiss? Like, he's got such a big, weird head. But so I was hyper. As soon as they kissed, I was like, oh, we finally see them kiss. So I could totally see why those two were like, I want to do it. No, I want to do it.
It was nicely done. I did like how he got to kind of wrap up the season. And he's like, look around this room. Look at all these weird aliens. This is it. This is what the Progenitors wanted.
Yeah.
Well done.
And a Kelpian marrying a Navarian and it's all great. I would have liked to know if they're going to have a whole pack of children.
Yeah, that would have been...
I can only imagine, if that was possible, what their children would look like.
So Michael kind of moved her way around. She had a talk with those two. She had a quick talk with Tilly, which was just stupid, I thought. I mean, not stupid, but she was underserviced this season, and I felt like, oh, I'm going to do this mentorship program. It's like, oh, I've created this idea for all of us to do cameos on Starfleet Academy.
Exactly.
But if you're going to really set up the show, then do it. Show her going back to have her say, I'm going to San Francisco. They're starting the academy there. Really set up the new show. I mean, the irony is Picard set up Legacy better than this show set up Academy, even though Academy had been greenlit when they had shot this thing.
Yeah, although I'm sure, they didn't know what they were doing yet, but
they knew she was going to be in it.
Yes. No, and she could have been walking around making everybody promise to come and be a mentor. But I just assumed she was doing that.
But I did like the thing where Raynor says, did you just call me gruff? That was great.
Yeah, crabby.
That's right. Crabby.
And her dude was back. Her dude was hanging around. He went to the wedding.
Did not notice.
Yeah.
Another reason why I felt like she was underserviced this season. I mean, it was great to have her back.
She did get some shining moments. Like, she did get some time in the spotlight, but I agree. I mean, that's, this season they packed in a lot. They had a lot of stuff going on and there just wasn't time, and a few more episodes would have given us time for those things. And then people would have complained that it was too slow.
I mean, Michael and Book definitely were handled well. Both of them had closure on multiple fronts. And Saru did, Raynor did, Culber did. Adira, no,
not really.
Not really.
Adira and Stamets didn't really, but pretty much everybody else did.
Yeah, and Tilly, yeah. So, and the bridge crew were never given arcs, so they don't get closure on anything.
No, and half of them were gone and whatever.
Yeah. So.
I mean, Reese got some nice moments. this season, especially due to the fact that everyone who'd come on when he did has left. So he got a few good moments.
I would have liked to have seen a bit more Linus. He was just kept on being a joke.
Yeah, he had some good ideas in that final episode. Everybody was so smart. That's what I like too, was everybody was so smart and everybody built on everybody else's idea to save the day. And Linus was part of that.
Yeah, you didn't need, the Breen weren't acting stupid. So you didn't have kind of the idiot plot situation.
Right.
But they really weren't that, I don't know. They were there, but they weren't cunning adversaries. It's not like you're dealing with Khan Khan, we shouldn't use Khan, but just a really smart adversary that they had to outwit.
No, it's just someone with a lot of brute force.
Exactly.
I did love that Culber got to say, I know I'm a doctor, not a physicist.
Yeah.
But trust me, please. But I'm like, I like when they get that in there.
But it was delivered. He didn't DeForest Kelly it up.
No, he didn't. But the spirit was there.
No, I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because it would have been too, look at what we're doing.
Yeah. And there's other, I loved when the giant Breen head says, are you insane? And Suru says, not to the best of my knowledge. I'm going to answer that way when people ask me if I'm insane.
Next time I ask you, I'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yes, because people do ask me sometimes.
So I liked how it ended on the beach. They got back together. We knew that. But it was
they got a big smoochy kiss.
Yeah.
Yay.
They talked about Grudge, and she got the call from Kovich, and they were ready to go off on their next mission.
Yep.
Ended with joy and happiness and optimism and hope for the future, and the mission continues, and it was a good end of a season. I think it was a good end of a series. They could have ended on that, and you would have said, you know what? That's nice. But they were given the chance to go back into the well and do even more. Now, I feel like one of the things they could have done is extended the wedding and given more closure to characters. So, Stamets would talk about his new job and,
yep,
that kind of thing. But that might have closed off avenues for these characters to be used later. So they really said, let's just give Michael and Book a happy ending and leave everyone else nebulous. And so we got our somewhat cliched, it's, how long do you think it's been? The son, they have a son now, Michael and Book.
I know, I was hoping they'd have a whole bunch of kids, but it looks like
he's like 35, right?
He's a captain. Yeah, he just became captain.
Michael and Book look great for, it being 35 years later.
Their makeup
40
was
years.
Good. They did a nice job with the makeup.
But the old age makeup was good, but they didn't look.
They didn't overdo it. We've seen a lot of Star Trek actors where they get aged on the show, and then as they hit that age in real life, they look so much better than they did with all that horrible makeup that they got. Yeah. So in this case, it's nice.
So they're living on Sanctuary 4, full of transworms.
In a gigantic house.
Huge. Well, she's an admiral, right? They were throwing a lot. She's an admiral. He's doing, I don't know what he's doing. He's beekeeper now.
He's foaming coffee.
I didn't get what was going on. Like, why did he put the honeycomb in the coffee cup?
Yeah, I didn't understand it either.
And there was a thing with the alien deer.
Yep, that she named Alice.
But I liked it. It's kind of a rustic setting. They were kind of getting back to nature, but they still had all their technology around. And there was nice accoutrement. The Shenzhou telescope from Giorgio was there and all that stuff. So
didn't she give that to Saru?
That's a good point. Maybe she got a new telescope, or he gave it back. Who knows? I wasn't a fan of the scene, just the moment when Book and the son, and they talk about, he does the brush off with the shoulder and swagger. It seemed anachronistic. It seemed a little too now.
Yep.
That seems like a first draft kind of idea that they would have polished.
It's something Strange New Worlds does a lot too. They just throw in something that seems way too contemporary.
This little coda was rushed because the WGA strike was coming and they had just a few weeks to get this thing written and shot.
But it was also, I thought, longer than it needed to be.
Yes, I think, the whole scene in the shuttle could have been shorter, if not necessary at all.
Agree. And then they tried to get things to tie it into Calypso, and they sort of did the physical work, but it still didn't make any sense.
I rationalize it that Daniels knows about craft and knows that this needs to happen. So it's a kind of a predestination paradox.
He knows... that's what I'm saying, the exact same thing that you're saying, basically.
But he can't.
But we still don't really find out anything about it, and so it's just it has to happen.
I could have lived without them ever showing us how the ship was de-updated. I could see them thinking the fans really need to see this, and it's like, you know what? We
don't. Yep.
We get it. You shot that thing before you knew you were jumping to the future, and I thought that the scene in episode 4, where she talks about dreaming, made enough sense that maybe it was all a dream or whatever. We didn't need to know. Still, it was a nice thing. The scene with Zora was nice. Then we had that weird, what was it? A memory.
Well, it was a big old cast hug is what it felt like, more than a real, you know what I mean? Like, it had one of those, like, let's make sure everybody gets to say goodbye to each other vibes.
It seemed like it was more for the actors than for the characters.
Yes.
None of the characters were serviced in any way. Now, we did get to see Oo and Detmer and Bryce.
Yeah.
I think if you look closely, Wilson Cruz was not there when they shot it.
It stuck out. It totally stuck out.
But they somehow did an insert with him and Sonequa hugging, and they kind of smartly snuck it, but he wasn't there.
It was super obvious to me.
But Jet, and I'm curious if you ask like Tig Notaro, like, how do you feel about flying up to Toronto, doing hair and makeup, and then standing in a room and hugging people, and then that's all, and pretending to talk to them?
Maybe she made a little vacation out of it, brought up the wife and kids.
Sure,
twins. Why not?
I'm. All these people are like, we're going to shoot this extra bit, but only Doug gets to say something. And I think all he says is Captain.
Yeah, there's no lines to memorize.
It was very Discovery. Hugging and kissing and emotion.
I did enjoy the hugging.
Sure.
I'll be honest.
In the end, I feel like
they didn't need it. They
didn't need it. They could have juiced up the wedding scene.
Yep.
And then still ended it on the beach.
Yep.
And we didn't need 30 years later.
Right, because, it was so much, it was about sort of the randomness of how we all exist and the beauty of mystery and the beauty of diversity and hope for the future, and it was all there without any of that stuff in the epilogue.
I think it made them feel better.
Yep, which is fine.
There were a couple of oddities in there. One is that apparently Vance is still in charge. How old is that guy?
Your fave. He didn't get to do much this season.
No, barely anything. And Tilly's still at the Academy, so she's never leaving.
Right.
I did like the scene of the Discovery exiting space dock and all the ships and shuttles lined up as like an honor guard.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful moment. Nice. And they did the disco music, and then they did the TOS music. Yeah, that was emotional for me. No, just ships, just VFX and music. It's all I care about.
Hey, it did the job.
I don't like human beings. I am a robot. No, I did. It was fine. I didn't dislike it, but we didn't need it. Yeah, I mean, they had to design new uniforms because it's the future, so we always need new uniforms.
Yeah,
they were fine.
It was fine.
It was all fine. Anyway, I think
we've done it.
It's a good season. A series that has had its ups and downs. I think we should later, this year, we maybe should do a disco retrospective or favorites.
Yeah, look at each season as a whole and compare them to each other because they were, and what I find interesting is very different opinions from people on what the best seasons were.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be fun. And I look forward to having some of the writers, actors, director, the people who worked on it, who can now talk about everything looking back at the series as a whole on our podcast. That would be really nice.
the show has quite the legacy. Strange New Worlds is a spin-off. Starfleet Academy is a spin-off. Short Treks was fun. That was a spin-off.
After Trek was fun.
Yes.
Aw. I have to keep throwing it in there. I'll be the last person who remembers that it existed because I still have all the episodes. I have them all.
I will miss Discovery. I'm glad it ended well. It wasn't.
Me too.
If season 4 were the last, which was a mixed bag season, I guess it would be easier to say goodbye. It'd be like, okay, they tried their best. But now now it's harder because we're like, wow, they're really getting into it now.
Yeah, they totally got it. Now we need more. I know.
Yeah. Let's see what they're going to do. Rayner was going to come back. He'd been really set up as a cool character. And,
yep.
There was a lot of potential there. Things possibly could have got cooler with Kovich now that we kind of know his deal. Yeah, there was even more exciting stuff to come.
But there isn't.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'll say a sad farewell to Discovery and a big thank you. How about that? Thank you, Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
For kicking off this whole era.
Thank you, Brian Fuller and Alex Kurtzman.
Thank you, Brian Fuller. Yes. And Alex Kurtzman, too. I think we should do our bits of the week.
Well, mine is about a friend of the pod and a stellar Star Trek veteran, Gates McFadden. News just broke that she's returning for season 3 of her podcast Investigates. She's going to have Michelle Hurd and Todd Stashwick and David Ajala, Sonequa.
Yep.
Were there some others mentioned? I mean, there's going to be more.
I think those were the 4 names that I saw, but those are great names. Those are all going to be good.
It's probably not going to be they haven't even started recording yet. And hopefully we'll have Gates on this summer after they're, between when they record and when they start releasing.
Nice. I'm excited for that because I really enjoy her podcast. I think she's a great interviewer and she gets great stories out of people.
Right, because the whole point of that podcast is they're not really talking about Star Trek at all.
Maybe she'll get a chance to redo her Anson Mount interview.
That thing was just a mess.
Just so weird. I want them to have another crack at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have sort of 2 things that go together that have to do with Subspace Rhapsody, which, although I haven't talked about it lately, it's still top of mind always as I sing the songs. The Rap did a great video interview with the songwriters and Celia Rose Gooding to talk about making the episode and writing all the songs. And then it's a very fun, pretty short, good interview. And then I want to mention this because there's a podcast called Open Pike Night that a while back did a fantastic, very long extended interview with the 2 songwriters that really told you step by step how they put the whole thing together. So we'll put links to both of these, and people like me who are obsessed with these songs and the musical can get their fill of how it was made.
We're in Emmy season quietly, but you notice it in Hollywood. There have been 2 for your consideration events this week for Star Trek. There was one for Discovery, and tonight there's one for Strange New Worlds. So they are Subspace Rhapsody is something they're really hoping gets some nominations either for the music or for the episode. So there's a push going on. Well, the show did get a lot of critical, not just that episode, but in general, notice for season 2, and I think we could see some real Emmy nominations this year.
I hope so. I doubt it, but I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, probably not, but because there's a lot of competition out there, but fingers crossed.
And I also just want to remind people, if you're in the New York area, Trek Long Island is this weekend. I will be there Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, just walking around and enjoying all the great panels. Sunday, I am moderating a talk with Kitty Swink.
I would go if I were closer.
Or had a transporter.
Indeed. Thank you all for sticking with us through season 5 of Discovery. All Access Star Trek Podcast will be taking a week off next Friday, but we'll be back in a couple weeks with something new and fun to talk about. Maybe a guest.